Hi students, welcome to another session. So far we have been discussing unit 2 and in this session we will go forward with the remaining topics, that is psychological testing. And uh, so as we have discussed the methods of psychological inquiry, if you can recall, uh, the observation method, correlation method, all these things are different types of techniques which are useful in carrying out psychological inquiry. However, these are defined to be used in at different contexts. Okay, if you can see observation, it is like naturalistic situation. There can be conditions like there will be natural situations where you may not, it is not possible to conduct an experimental study. And next to it is experimental, where the experimental study is very apt, and the naturalized method is difficult there. And in that observation there are two types of method, that is naturalistic and controlled observation, and non-participant versus participant observation. If you can recall the experimental method, there the important concept variable where the attributes are changed, the value changes, and there are independent variables, dependent variables, etc. And we have also checked with the correlation method, correlation, that is positive correlation, negative correlation, and zero correlation, that is not no significant relationship. And then we come up with the survey method. In survey method we have uh, like we have been dealing with these methods, uh, like you can say, personal interviews. In personal interviews we have seen structured and unstructured interviews. In that there are individuals, group wise distributions. And then we have checked with the questionnaire survey and telephonic survey. Questionnaire is a structured open-ended questionnaire and a closed-ended questionnaire. And let's see the next topic, that is psychological testing, which is part of the methods of psychological inquiry. This is the last part one, and we have case studies so far. And let's proceed with the today's topic, that is psychological testing. In psychological testing is one such method which is useful for for studying individual differences. See, assessment of individual differences has remained one of the important concerns of psychology from the very beginning. Like if you can recall the methods, observation, correlation, all these things will be dealt in a comparative way. Okay, but here it is like on an average basis these methods are useful for a large group, but psychological testing can particularly deal with an individual. If you can see, the psychologists have constructed different types of tests for assessment of various human characteristics such as intelligence, aptitude, personality, interest, attitudes, values, educational achievement, etc. These are all related to personal factors, right? Education, educational achievement, yes, I achieved 80%, 70%. Intelligence, you can say highly intelligent, less intelligent, poor intelligent. Aptitude, high aptitude, like this is the ability test, that is aptitude. And personality, which type of personality, introvert, extrovert, narcissistic personality. There is the big five personality questionnaire is there. And interest schedule, Holland interest schedule is there. Attitudes can be different. There are different personal psychology tests which are available to understand and particularly human behavior in different factors. This will help you to deal with individually and personal factors like observation. All these factors deal with the social factors, whereas psychological test can be very much useful in analyzing and assessing or studying behavior or factors related to individual. Okay, these tests are used for various purposes such as personal selection, placement, training, guidance, diagnosis, and in multiple contexts, like education institutes, guidance clinics, industries, defense. So, what are the uses of the test? These tests for selecting employees, in military situations, about your mental capacities, and guidance like career guidance, life, you can say life coach, and particularly psychological training purposes, diagnosis, or mental status. All these things can be done with the help of psychological testing. Okay, so and in which context? Educational institutes use them, clinics use them, industries use them to see whether the employee is suitable for that particular industry and its goals. And then, technically speaking, a psychological test is a standardized and objective instrument. If you can see, there will be items which will be seeing useful to assess an individual standing in relation to others on some mental or behavioral characteristic. Mental or behavioral characteristic, mental processes such as thinking, memory, forgetting. There are a lot, right? And then behavioral characteristics, positive. These behavioral characteristics like emotions, angry, stress, anxiety. These like attitudes, say winning attitude, happiness. These will be useful to measure, to assess. Two things are worth noting in this definition, that is objectivity and standardization. Objectivity refers to the fact that if two or more researchers administer a psychological test on the same group of people, both of them would come up with more or less the same values for each person of the group. Objectivity is very much similar to the reliability. Objectivity also let us lets us understand that if we administers this test, that is psychological test, to one set of people, you are administrating that, and then if your friend or a colleague administrating the same type of test to another group of similar characteristics, it is called objectivity. That if I can do it, you can also do it. If you can do it, some other can do it. That is what objectivity is. And in order for a psychological test to be an objective measure, it is essential that items should be worded in such a manner that they are communicate the same meaning to different readers. Yes, in particularly items, if you can see, those are the statements or the questionnaires in the psychological testing. In that test, those questions like how do you feel in the exam hall, if you can understand it, the other person who is attempting the test, or particularly the other way, like the other person who is also using this test, administrating or analyzing other person, can also should understand this. Okay, it is essential, yes. Also, the instructions to the test takers about how to answer the test item should be specified in advance. Yes, the person who is taking the test, that is the respondent, also should know what he is going to answer, how he is going to answer. There should be uh, then so so there are these topics. If we can see, the subjectivity refers to the matter should be specified in advance. The procedure of administrating the test, such as environmental conditions, time limit, mode of administration, individual or group, should be spent, and the procedure for scoring the participants' responses need to be described. If we have to, as we are discussing the objectivity, the as we are dealing like you see, like as we are replicating, the other person who is also conducting should also have to understand these rules. right? And these instructions particularly has to be understood. That is why the standardized meaning has to come in the test. Okay. And the procedure of administrating the test, such as environmental conditions, time limit, mode of administration, individual or group, should be spelled, and the procedure for scoring the participants' responses need to be described. And you have to make the student or the respondent or the interviewee, whatever you call the participant, all these points from here to here, it is saying that the participant should understand what are all the conditions in the test. Okay. And he has to understand how he is going to be evaluated to perform according to the need. And if you have taken the test, for example, it is not called as a psychological test, but also you may also have come across some personal interview methods, some questionnaires based on the feedback forms which we have discussed in the questionnaire method. Like these things, these are also psychological tests we will be using. But if you have taken particularly any behavioral test like stress, anxiety test, or intelligence test, those will be different. If you have, you might have seen that a test contains a number of questions. Yes, there will be a lot of questions that are called items. With this, with their probable responses, there can be yes or no, true or false. There is a rating scale, option scale, etc., which are related to particular human characteristics or attribute. That is, either if you are measuring that intelligence, the question should be related to intelligence only. It is important here that the characteristic for which a test has been developed should be defined clearly and unambiguously. There should be no doubt that the student is being evaluated about the intelligence, about the anxiety, about the stress. Particularly, the question should be very clear, and all items should be related to that characteristic only. The characteristic is related to neuroscience, openness, and like you can say positive attitude. You have to be, those questions should be clearly related to that particular characteristic. You might also noted that often a test is meant to for a particular age group. Yes, there are tests like there are intelligence tests, like verbal based test. Verbal based in childhood, you may not know, you may not be educated very well to understand what are the questions. Like in that way, those age groups will be 3 to 5 years or below 8 years. So if you are above that age, there can be another type of test. So the age group is also a factor. And even intelligence particularly is done at the student level. If you the characteristic the mental processes or mental abilities like stress or anxiety is done for adult, right? The tests are also based on age group. It may or may not have a fixed time limit for answering questions. Yes, it may have that in a particular speed test or power test, in the types of tests we will deal it. So in that type of test, there is a need that the time is fixed, or there is no need of fixing the time. Okay. So then next, the construction of a test is a test systematic process and involves certain steps. Yes, they in the test construction also, in order to test should be standardized and objectified, the test should be standardized before it. It involves detailed analysis of items, that is questions. The question should be properly designed and estimating reliability, validity, and norms. Norms which we discussed age. Let us see all these terms in a sequential manner. Reliability of the test refers to the consistency of the scores obtained by an individual on the same test on two different occasions. Okay, that is, if a let us proceed and see. For example, you administer the test to a group of students today and re-administer it on the same set of students after some time, let us say 20 days. If the test is reliable, there should not be any variation in the scores obtained by the students on the two occasions. So what he is saying, reliability. Reliability, how? If there are two groups, group A and group B, if the first test you in two situations, like there is a group of students, that is group A, on 17th August the intelligence test is administered with 50 questions. There are courses evaluated on after 20 days, like 14 plus, like on September 5th 15th. If the same intelligence test is administered again on the group A students, you can understand that the result should be same, more or less equal. So then the test is reliable because it is giving same results on both situations, both sets. If the test is reliable, yeah, that is done. And for this we can compute test retest. The first, that is like 17th August it is called test, and September 15th it is called retest, which indicates the temporal stability of the test scores over the time. Like over the time, that is 20 days, the scores which on 17th or 15th are both are same. It is computed by finding out coefficient of correlation, like the performance of students on 17th versus 15th. These correlations should be significantly effective. That should be effective. Then it is called reliability. Okay, there is also another kind, that is split half reliability. Okay, this is one method. The other method is like it gives an indication about the degree of internal consistency of the test. This is based on the assumption that items of the test, if they are from the same domain, should correlate with each other. Like the same domain, the domain can be age, the domain can be human beings, the domain can be of same group, either human being, either animal, either toys. And here we have an example. If they are from different domains, it cannot be possible. If they are same domain, that apples and oranges, what is the group? That is fruits. Then they would not what? They will not correlate, because if you take apples with the pens, it is different domain. You cannot compare. For finding out internal consistency, the test is divided into two equal halves, employing odd and even method in one group and items in another group. Odd method in one group, that is 1, 3, 5. There are 50 students, 1, 3, 5, and so on to 50. The another even numbers into another group, and the correlation is computed between the scores of odd and even items. In the earlier method, in the earlier reliability, it is checked for a period of time, consistency between the first test and the second test and retest, and second split half, that is odd and even methods. Both values should be similar and equal. So then it is called reliability. For a test to be usable, it should also be valid. Validity refers to the question. Does the test measure what it claims to measure? Like if you are taking intelligence test, I'm sticking with this point, intelligence, for the feasibility and understanding. There can be different factors like anxiety, stress, we have told, intelligence, memory, forgetting. There are different factors, but let us see. If you are taking intelligence test, it is meant to measure the intelligence. For example, if you have constructed a test of mathematics achievement, it should measure only mathematical ability. If it is for a language, it should be measuring only language proficiency, right? So this is called validity. So far we discussed reliability on test retest and odd even method, and then validity, what it is meant, it should measure it. Next, finally, a test becomes standardized when norms are developed for the test. Norms, what are norms? Norms are, if we can recall, like in the, if you see the instructions, norms are instructions, or the care should be taken by the interviewer or the researcher. Okay, these are the conditions like age, environmental conditions, the procedures, how you want to be. Like these are the norms. Norm is a normal or average performance of the group. The test is administered on a larger number of students. Their average performance standards are set based on age, sex, place of residence, etc. This helps us in comparing the performance of an individual student with other in the same group. It also helps in interpreting individual scores obtained on a test. Yes, the norms. When you are speaking for the norm, like age group, if a person, when the test reliability and validity has completed, after the instructions are very clear and understandable, when you get some score, you can compare it to similar age group, right? And you can compare it to the norms at this particular 6 to 14 age group. 6 to 14 age group, you can do it. Like on the young persons, these type of conditions are called norms, and the performance has to be reliable. And yes, so far we have discussed these things, and the particularly the psychological testing, it should be objective and systematic, and then reliability, validity, and norms. These psychological tests are very useful methods in individual performance assessment or individual's ability assessment, assessment. Okay, this is very important one in measuring individual capacity, and there are also group tests. Let us see the types of tests in the next session. Okay, so hope you understand this topic about the introduction to psychological testing. This is one method in methods of psychological inquiry, and let me meet in you in the next session. Thank you so much. Have a great day.